Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 5 of Pop It Like It's Hot. As always, we are coming at you live from RIW Hobbies and Games in Livonia, Michigan. And we got a lot to talk about this week. My name's Chris. I'm here with my co-host.
I'm Cameron.
I'm Dave.
And guys, this was an exciting week for Pauper. We had what was a lot of people speculated going to be big news with the banned and restricted announcement this Monday. Turned out to be kind of a non-story. What were you guys' takeaways?
I think it was really interesting that they didn't say anything about it.
Yeah, I wanted a little mention about possibly Ephemerate. I know we chatted briefly. I put a question, what do you think would be the most unsurprising ban if you heard it? Although I don't think we all thought anything was going to happen, but, you know, Ephemerate, Astrolabe were kind of the two we're eyeing, but no news. So.
Yeah, we've talked a little bit about, our thoughts on the format and how bans probably weren't necessary, but, it's always nice to get recognition in any kind of way, and to not have them say anything was, I won't say concerning, but I don't know, you like to get the little pat on the back every once in a while from Wizards, but yeah, the big story there is nothing got banned, nothing changes. Feels like it's a brand new format after Modern Horizons anyway, so maybe they just want to give it some time to settle down and find out, what the real story is.
Yeah, I think that's the big thing. I think Ephemerate could be banned in the future. I don't think it's at that point quite yet, even though the MCQ results might say something else, but yeah.
Yeah, the MCQ, that was a big deal. I'm sure a lot of you are already familiar with it, but the Mythic Championship qualifier, the Pauper one, happened this past Saturday. I know a few of the people that are on the podcast participated. Don't worry, none of us will be taking a break for the Pro Tour this time, but yeah, 214 people played a Pauper tournament on Magic Online. Went 9 rounds. I was excited. I enjoyed it. Were you guys able to follow any of it?
I was just kind of keeping up with the commentary. You guys, as your day was going, I know Mike started off 3-0 on, I'm not sure what he was. Oh, ATOG? Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
What did you play it in it?
I didn't play in it.
I did play in it. I took an Infect deck. I was really trying to get underneath what I thought the 2 big decks were going to be, which were Jeskai and Tron. They were well represented. I didn't happen to run across any of them, in my 2-3 drop. But, yeah, the results, I got them here in front of me. The top 8 was basically who's who of Jeskai decks, although they did not take down the championship.
Yeah, we see Boggles again.
Boggles again.
Representing Pauper in the grindiest format, which is kind of funny. But
that's a good point. I didn't really think of that. The grindiest format in Magic, and a turn 4, Bogle's Hexproof deck has taken both seats at the Pro Tour that Pauper got to send.
Yeah, a child only a mother could love type of deck. But that's my 2 cents, I guess. Some people really love it, I've heard. Yeah, it's interesting.
I think it's interesting. We have the data here. Boggles was kind of underrepresented for how good it did. It won a lot more than it maybe should have. Do you want to get into that?
Yeah, so I pulled some numbers. The Pauper Discord, I don't have the gentleman's name in front of me, but he went through all the replays from the MCQ and put together metagame analysis, and we dug into the numbers a little bit, and Bogles was the big winner on the day, but it only accounted for 4.2% of the overall metagame, but it won about twice the rate you would expect Bogles to win. Dave, I think you mentioned that you thought maybe that was due to some of the natural predators to Bogles, Chainer's Edict and some of the other Edict effects being underrepresented.
Yeah, I mean, I look at the top decks with Jeskai, Stompy, Fogtron, Burn, Affinity, Hexproof, Elves. Like, where's any Edict effects? I know there was Tron, but just the results look like there's a lot of aggro, which would beat up on the Tron decks, which would be better against Boggles. And then no Edict effects, no mono blacks, no blue blacks, I don't know any other decks.
It was a field when you look at the field, in retrospect, it's ripe for Bogles players to just kind of run through it, and that proved itself out in the results. Speaking of which, we can dive into some of the other numbers here. 49 out of the 214 people were on some variation of Jeskai, the mid-range deck that we talked about last week. turns out it is actually 52.5% against the field, rather than the 48 that Brian had predicted. And it overperformed its metagame representation.
Yeah. Did we get into... So let's just run down the top 8, what that looks like, if anybody doesn't
Sure,
know.
yeah.
I know you're probably driving in your car, but if you're at work, you're probably going to pull up another window if you haven't seen already, but...
Yeah, so we got Bogles in first place. Then we got an aggro Jeskai list with the Glenhawks and Skyfishers. In third place, you have a more control version of Jeskai. Top 4 is rounded out with Burn. Then you at number 5, you actually have a different take on Jeskai control that runs a lot of the Pyroblast and Red Elemental Blast, aimed at taking out some of the problematic flicker creatures in the format, Archaeomancer, Mnemonic Wall, and Muldrifter. Number 6, to nobody's surprise, you have Hellsow, playing his own brand of Tron. Another Jeskai list with all the birds, and then number 6, Jeskai control. There's 6 Jeskai lists in the top 8, if I'm not mistaken. Or, I'm sorry, 5. 5 Jeskai lists in the top 8. Although notably, they are 4 completely different takes on the archetype, which is something I'm interested in. I'd like to go into a little bit more. Dave, you kind of did a dive on the actual deck lists of these Jeskai lists in the top 8. What were some of your takeaways there?
Yeah, so I looked at the 5 versions that made the top 8. 19 lands was the common thread, although you did have a 21 lander. A certain number of fetches, either from 4 to 6 was usually the split. So I think a big diversion was, are they playing Glinthawk or not? Their number of creatures, so you can have a heavy creature build of it, and that would be around 19 creatures.
Which is kind of what we're referring to as the aggro or more of a mid-rangey Jeskai list that's running
they're
at
able
Glinthawks.
to turn to a Glinthawk, pick
Right.
up the Labe,
Right.
or let me see if anybody's on. So yeah, and you see people playing with the mana now as well. So I think that's, if you're going to be brainstorming, you're playing some of these Karoo lands to help kind of generate even more card advantage.
Right.
And cycle lands.
Yeah, like that's Boros Monarch type play book strategy, and they're just like, okay, well, another way to go on top. You see, let me see, Prismatic Strands being kind of thrown into the mix. If you look at Bilster 47's build, that got fifth
Bilster,
place.
that's the most intriguing build to me. He did some things that you're not seeing in any of the other lists. You mentioned the 2 Prismatic Strands that he runs in the main deck. And the other kind of innovation that Kung Fu Trees had actually been working on developing, and you see Bilster here putting it to great use, is Reign of Revelation. That's a 4-mana draw spell, 3 in a blue, draw 3 cards, and discard a card, I believe?
Yes.
Yep, that's it.
Yeah, which...
Interesting card, yeah. I want to know kind of the logic behind that exact choice of the discard being part of it for Strands.
Yeah, the discard is, Strands obviously helps there. I think other than that, you are able to put some of your important spells into the graveyard that you can recur with Archaeomancer.
And more than that, it's just card filtering. It's just you draw 3 and discard 1. It's compulsive research, but always getting the extra card.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
So that was kind of an interesting innovation there. We saw Bilster take that to 5th place there in the MCQ. But yeah, it seems like Jeskai is kind of splintering itself into 2 distinct decks that, obviously share a good number of cards, but they have very different game plans, especially in the early turns. So
There's, like, if you... some of our notes, I mean, obviously, viewers can't see this, but there's the core of the deck, where you have Archaeomancer, Core Skyfisher, Muldrifter. So Forced Skyfisher was a common theme of every deck.
I think all
here.
of them ran 4 of those.
Yep.
Yeah.
And all but 1, or no, and it was either 3 or 4 Muldrifters.
Yeah. Yep. 3 or 4 Muldrifters. Generally 2 Archaeomancers, but Pascal 3000 in 8th place was on 3. So 2 or 3 Archaeomancer, 4 Skyfisher, 3 or 4 Muldrifter, 4 Preordain in every deck, 4 counterspell on every deck, 2 to 3 ephemerate, 4 scred in every deck, 4 astrolabe, obviously. But then you get down to, I think an interesting part is the sideboard. Everyone's on Pyroblast, Hydroblast, and at least 1 standard bearer.
Yeah, the standard bearer is just your answer to a lot of the, like hexproof Bogle's decks that are really trying to suit up one creature. It'll shut down a Bogle's deck if you play it at the right time.
Right, and looking at the performance, like this is the most played deck of this MCQ.
By a wide margin, too.
Yeah, and we touched on
23%
that,
of the
I think, in
metagame.
our chat. It was like, is this a deck that, people who are fond of bolting or brainstorming or preordaining from Legacy or other formats, are they gravitating towards something like this? Or do you have people gravitating towards, I just want to play the best deck, what won the last MCQ, I'm going to play Boggles? Or so I think you have some of that.
Yeah, especially in a tournament like the MCQ, you're going to have a lot of players that maybe aren't Pauper play. I mean, we don't get 214 people for the challenge for sure. So to see 214 people join the MCQ, that means that people from other formats are, buying a lottery ticket for the Pauper MCQ. And I think it's a little bit of a combination of all of the above. You've got talented players from other formats looking for what maybe is the best deck and just running it out there. And I guess, that's why you're going to see so many copies of it in the top 8 here.
Yeah, it's at first we dug into all the results in the order of what top 8'd, like what down to 32nd or so.
Yeah.
And then we got to see the breakdown of how many people played what, and seeing how many people actually played Jeskai was like, oh, they just it was just so represented.
Yeah.
About a quarter of the room of the tournament was a Jeskai build.
Yeah, just breaking down kind of the top few decks in the metagame. You had Jeskai in the lead, 49 people playing it. That's 23% of the metagame. 46 people played Stompy, although based on the number of people playing it, Stompy did underperform. It only won 49% of its matches. Tron, though, was the big story. We've talked about Tron a lot on this podcast as maybe the most powerful deck in the format. But Tron, if you sort by, expected wins, Tron very much underperformed what you would expect from a deck that was 10% of the metagame. It only accounted for 5% of the wins.
Yeah.
So 22 people on Tron. Hellsow was the only notable finisher on the deck. Cam, what do you think about that? That's your deck.
Yeah, I think it was the Boogeyman, and I think it was the deck to beat in this tournament. And I think it was maybe represented by players that either weren't very good or ran into a lot of hate. Because the deck, unlike Jeskai, the deck actually can fold to a critical mass of hate.
Yeah. And it's easy to kind of target that hate because there's not so much a control and an aggro version of Tron. I mean, you do have Finger and Tron, but you know what you're... With the Hellsour or the Birdman Tron list, you kind of know what you're up against and you know how to hate against it, whereas Jeskai is kind of more modular, and like we just went over, there's 100 different ways to build it, so it's harder to exactly hate against.
And then I also think a lot of people might have... It's a harder deck to play, I would say, than even Jeskai.
Yeah.
And I would guess that a lot of people that played Tron didn't really know what they were doing with Tron. They just played the best deck and lost a lot with it. I still think it's the most powerful deck in the format, and I think in the hands of the right pilot, it's still the best deck. But yeah.
Absolutely.
Also, notably, Birdman, a very prominent Tron player, was not playing in this.
Yeah, he was a GP Vegas playing limited. Come on, Birdman, what are you doing? This is the MCQ.
Vegas over sitting in my underwear at home on my computer? I mean, is it even a comparison?
Well, to be fair, there was a Pauper Championship in Vegas that he played in, and talking to him at the time, he said, if he had thought about the schedule, he probably would have stayed home to play the MCQ. It was that important to him, but GP Vegas is a fun thing to go to, and if I had the opportunity to, I might have skipped this tournament for it, honestly, as much as I hate to say that as a spike in Pauper.
One last thing on the Tron, you didn't see a lot of the, I would say, not just mono blue Delver, but there was like one Scred Delver, one Mono Blue, and one Blue Black Delver, which
Yeah.
I know the deck may be on a downturn, but you see it come through a little bit on the challenges. And,
Yeah.
but that being a natural predator of Tron not being so present, you'd think, but I think, people may be new to the format. They're like, hey, it's a weekend, it's a moto tournament. I'm going to jam aggro. If I get there, fine. If I don't, like, I do this when I get ready for tournaments where I'm like, I don't want to play a deck that's so thought intensive and all day is a grind. I just want to jam aggro. If I win, it's quick. If I lose, it's quick. But there's no like mental fatigue where it's 9-round tournament. I mean, you wouldn't know how big it is going in, but I think that just the room being so full of aggro also played into it.
Yeah,
Can't
absolutely.
imagine
I'm
that
looking through the deck list here, and it looks like the top placement for Delver was 6-3 in 32nd place. And yeah, it just was not well represented in the tournament, so kind of almost a non-factor in the metagame.
Did Metzel even play in the MCQ?
I'm looking at it, and no, it does not look like he did. The next day, he did play in the challenge, and lo and behold, Metzel with another top 8. He had second place in this week's challenge. It was kind of moving. That was kind of the other big event of the weekend. Was the Pauper Challenge. We had 82 people playing in it, so another big challenge. It's the number of participants in the Sunday challenges has been trending up over the past month or two. We're over 80 for 2 weeks in a row. A couple different things I wanted to point out from the top 8 list here. Jeskai took down another tournament. It was 17% of the challenge metagame, so adjusting for the amount of players, it was pretty close to the representation in the MCQ.
Yeah.
The top 3 was exactly the same: Jeskai, Stompy, and Tron, in that order. Metzel, though, we've talked about him week after week. He just continues to put up consistent top 8, top 4 finishes in these Pauper challenges, and it's something to behold.
It's crazy. He's just always wins with the deck. He's one of the very few players that actually plays the deck, and he always wins with it.
Yeah, I've played other people on Mono Blue Delver online. Obviously, I'm sure a lot of people have, and nobody seems to have the mastery of that deck like he does. It's incredible. Third place in the challenge was Hellsow. He top 8'd the MCQ on Saturday, and he top 4'd the challenge on Sunday. So congrats, Hellsow. Very successful weekend for you on Tron. 8-1 finish. That's incredible. And then in fourth place, somebody I want to talk about a little more extensively, we had Paulo Cabral, a Brazilian player on his own tribe list, and going to do something a little bit different this week. We're actually going to be interviewing Paulo and discussing that interview. He's going to talk to us about the Brazilian pauper scene, how they continue to be so successful in this format, how he goes about brewing decks, how he came to pilot this tribe deck that he's been very successful with. And I think it's going to be something that you guys are going to like a whole lot. So we're going to get into that. The full interview is going to be available for everybody on our YouTube channel. The link to that will be available in the notes to the show. So I hope you guys enjoy it. I guess the first thing that we wanted to talk about was, could you tell us a little bit about the Brazil pauper scene?
Pauper scene here is pretty developed. More probably 18% of the stores make at least an event a week, and with minimum 8 players. Many stores get 20, 30 players in the most popular places. That's the paper. Most of the time I play only online, and online we do have 2 groups on WhatsApp where we play and test things together. One group have 20 or 30 players, only grinders. The other group has around 200 players. We help each other, and that's it. It's a very good place to play Pauper.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
Yeah, here is a very format because you don't need that much money, and your cards don't rotate out, so people like it, and they invest money into it. Many players have like all the decks of the format, and when a new deck start to play, like my tribe, players rush to the stores to buy all the deck and build all at once, and not need to worry about deck anymore.
Yeah, that's how I like to do it.
Yeah, I was one of the players years ago. Even playing online, I had all the Pauper decks. Many of them I had like 2 or 3 of the same deck, because I used it to loan it to some friends to play, and they like this. Many players do this here in Brazil. So cheap, and the cards won't get away of the format.
So how do you guys, when you're testing or brewing, like building new decks, how do you guys coordinate that amongst each other?
Yeah, many times when we get an idea, we do share idea with each other, and we test. If the idea is good, we start helping each other, and more people get into the deck to test. Like this tribe deck, I had the idea on Wednesday, I believe. One day after I built the deck, made some results. I believe was a 3-2 or a 4-1, and Carves liked the idea. Started testing with me. 3 days after, I already had a good list, making 5. The first list of tribe that got it after the bans. 2 days after that, Carves found out that the deck needed deep analysis, and after some leagues, I just threw it in the deep analysis and started to take shape. We basically do the steps with every deck we find out that is good in the format. We heard that sharing the list and having more brains to develop a list is more effective than just hiding it and trying to develop it all by yourself. It takes too many resources from one person, time to test for just one person. This is a bit little slower than good grinders testing the same list or lists based on that list. Right now we are playtesting the Gurmag Storm from Caleb. We do want to refine that list so it can be so reliable. There are 3 persons testing the deck. I am the 4th, and we will start today with it.
So do you feel like that deck has potential to be a great deck?
Yeah, it has potential to be a tier 1 deck. It beats strong, it's Jeskai, and if it has a good hand, it can beat pretty much any deck, because you can combo on turn 1. And that's basically how Storm played on times.
Yeah.
So it has very good potential, and I like it. It is as fast as Tribe, or a little bit faster, a little bit less constant on the actual list of Caleb. I think the deck can get some constants and will be a tier 1 deck. Right now it's a tier 2, maybe tier 3 Pauper deck, but I think it can go to tier 1.
So how long do you guys how much time do you put into a deck before you feel like you're ready to, take it out into the field?
I feel comfortable with a deck if I see potential, basically, to take it to, let's put it, challenge or MCQ, I would put at least 3-4 days of testing, 8-10 hours a day. So this way I can be sure that the cards in the list are the ones, or at least close.
So what resources do you use to get some of the ideas to brew your decks?
Yeah, Tribe was a funny idea. I believe I was playing Stompy. I was playing Stompy. And I faced a guy with an unstrained list with black, green, and blue. He had the combo that uses the in-core creature.
Yeah, the cleric combo.
Yeah, and had the Umbra, the green Umbra.
The Trifolk Umbra.
Makes the creature, Trifolk Umbra. And at a certain point, the game was already lost to him. He just made Tireless Tribe and discarded Whiteout and made the combo out of nowhere with 2 cards in hand. I looked to that and I thought we don't need the Gush to make Tribe play. This card alone can fit right into the Gush play, and Tribe will be reborn. That's it. It's a solid card. That was on Wednesday. One day after, I already had a Tribe list close to the one I made top 4 this challenge.
So you said you were pretty close by the next day, but it took a lot of testing before you were comfortable enough to make that kind of run in the challenge?
Yeah, I needed the testing because that is a new field. Gush is not around anymore. Detection Probe is not around. Many cards are out of the format, and Delver isn't anymore a problem, and there are other decks to think about. For example, my first Tribe list didn't run Prismatic Strands, which I think is the best card aggro on this format. Maybe against Jeskai is 1 or 2 off, but it's still good. And I didn't play any copy of it. I started with Peak to replace Detection Probe. Tried 4 whiteouts, which I found out later was not a good idea. You want 2 or 3 whiteouts on your hand at any time, and many times you don't do it because the deck plays safe and Circular Logic replaces the card because it has Madness. So most of the time you don't need whiteout. It's card, so you can combo controls on the game, but you most of the time just go with what you have in your hand.
One of the things that we noticed about the deck is that with whiteout, it allows you to get into counterspell fights a lot more aggressively to make sure your game plan can progress. Has that been your experience as well?
Yeah, on the beginning, I was losing to Jeskai because my posture was not the right one. You don't want to hold lands in your hand against control decks. You want to win the counter war before the combo. So you want to play all your lands, and that's counterintuitive because of tireless, and whiteout make it possible to punch and not be punished by it. And that's even better than when we had Gush around, because you had to make some counts and you couldn't counter every card you wanted. And with whiteout, you just go ahead and counter everything you want and play your lands. Of course, you counter cards that do not affect your combo and do not put pressure enough to make your combo a problem. In the counter wars, whiteout is just a monster. You can go to one card in hand and still make the combo work. And you just, against control, you just spin the land on the table and go ahead.
Just curious, like, what other so you said you tried some other things, like were there other directions that you went with the deck before you ended up on what the list you're playing now?
Yeah, I had Muldrift Temerate with Tatmos Priest, and I didn't like it. It's pretty slow and throwing up finishing you. It's good against mono black and some other mid-range decks, but it's pretty weak against deck where you have to put pressure and make the combo fast before they take control. I tried the line full without the Seeker of the Way, but aggro decks just eat you alive because they play fast creatures and make it impossible for you to combo without 4 or 5 lands in play because they have 2 or 3 answers and the blocker. I didn't have a Prismatic Strands beginning, so this war was really a problem. I lost many matches in the first 2 days to Stompy. A deck today I think is one of the easiest matchups for Tribe. I tried Seeker without Prismatic Strands, which is an error because you can't put it very well with only 8 counter spells, and it end up dying to the removals of the other aggro decks. I tried the deck with 2 Dizzy spells and 2 model the mixture, but later I found out, for example, 1 Merchant Scroll replacing 1 is a bit better. I tried it without mixture, but sometimes you need inside out and you don't have it in your hand, and no matter how many cantrips you do, you don't find it. I already digged into 35 cards and didn't found Inside Out or Tireless Tribe in different times. And that use to model 1 Merchant Scroll and 1 Dizzy spell, just to make sure. This way, later on, I had a match, for example, where I transmuted Model the Mixture into Merchant Scroll, into Dizzy spell, into Tribe to get the combo going on.
Oh, wow.
Won the match, of course. Think if you don't play test the deck, you won't find out this. I see many players playing Tribe straight up cantrips and 4 tribes and 4 maximum they use is Merchant Scroll. Don't use this spell, don't use some of the other tools. Giga Draws, for example, they use it, so you need the other stuff. Or the other way, you win many matches because you can't find the tribe, or you can't tap the lens of your opponent before making the combo. So I am not as good as it looks.
Well, it certainly looks good because yourself and two of your fellow Brazilian players are second, third, and fourth on the trophy leaderboard. So you've definitely got some things to share with the rest of us.
Yeah, this is basically hard work because without it, you just won't know how to play the matches, won't be comfortable against some decks. Jeskai for us is a match I hate playing, but I played so many matches against Jeskai that I am comfortable. If my opponent make one or two mistakes, he is toasted. I think I have over 2 matches under Tribe right now.
You broke up a little bit. How many matches?
200.
Oh, wow.
I played the deck for 2 weeks. Every day I play around 5 leagues.
That's dedication.
That's a lot of Pauper. A lot of Pauper.
Yeah, if you want to win, you have to dedicate to that.
Absolutely.
Right.
Well, Paulo, we're coming up on the end of our time here. Was there anything else you wanted to say or anything you wanted to share with our listeners before we let you go?
Yeah, I think this deck is one of the top 3 of this new meta game. It is very good against Tron, is good against Jeskai, and insane against Stompy. So I think people should go give it a try. The deck will be popular and well played, maybe more played than before the bans.
Wow.
So that's it. If people want to give it a try, don't give up on the beginning because you made 1 or 2 mistakes. Learn from it and try to not repeat the mistakes. That's the way to go.
Thanks so much.
Yeah.
I thank you guys for the chance to talk about the deck. It's a deck I enjoy very much playing and enjoyed every second developing it.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for listening to our interview. Thank you, Paulo, for joining us, and we will see you again soon. So, again, really thankful to Paulo for sitting down with us. What did you guys think about what he had to say? He had a lot to say.
I thought it was really, really interesting. I thought the fact that there's a big old group chat, I thought that was really interesting. I thought it was really interesting that he spends a lot of time on testing. I think it was really interesting.
Yeah, I know that for me, when we started this podcast, we started a group chat, and it's been a great kind of place for me to sort of share ideas that I have with Pauper, even outside of the podcast.
Yeah.
And so I can imagine that, if that group chat was Carves and Lindoso and, Paulo Cabral and these people that are at the top of the trophy leaderboard, the insights you're getting there are just invaluable if you're looking to be better in the format.
Yeah, I think, we're just tapping into something here that has been going on for a long time and has been driving Pauper pretty much the whole way.
Yeah, these guys have been...
Yeah. I just feel kind of honored to kind of tap into that. It's kind of foreign to me, kind of seeing what Magic's like in a different country and how passionate they are about Pauper. I mean, I can play Modern if I like. I don't really like it so much. I can play Constructed. I can play Legacy if I want. I have a Legacy deck because of Pauper. Like, I'm kind of really appreciative that there is Pauper for me to kind of do all these other things in Magic. But it's kind of really refreshing to see kind of their perspective as well, and see kind of
Absolutely
how much they're using Pauper to experience Magic.
Yeah, they really embrace Pauper, because it's a budget format, to really get the best Magic experience you can get and not have to invest, $1,000 on a deck that's going to rotate. And, you mentioned they have been doing this for a long time. People like Carves and Paulo, they've been innovating decks for years. Just recently, they've been responsible for not only the Tribe deck that Paulo talked about at length in the podcast, but Lindoso is really the driving force behind the Jeskai mid-range list that we're seeing all over the place now. Carves is really the person who brought the Astrolabe Bogles list to prominence. So a lot of things that we think of as just, staples of the metagame have been refined and built through some of these group chats and some of these, communities of Brazilian players that here in the U.S. we just don't hear about as much.
I think it's amazing just the amount of effort and work they're putting in to develop these decks. Like the amount of time, I feel like we're kind of on par with Legacy, whereas Legacy right now in USA has kind of hit a standstill, or like a
pun intended.
A stale, yeah. I'm just gonna wait. Yeah, like a stale pool of like, oh, we know what everything is. Let's just wait. But like, I feel like with Pauper and having all this influx of work being put in, the format's being pushed and pushed and pushed, despite having a huge tournament support. So, shouts go out to all these guys, we're just Americans chilling here. Once a week we'll play. And I especially am on the outside looking in, not playing online. Like, I'm starting to look to get into it, but like, I have a Mac. I'm just looking at like, man, I get to play once a week, and it's kind of more casual, so I can, Yeah,
you have an interest in the competitive side of it, but by default, it's kind of more casual just because you don't have that access.
Well,
for 8 to 10 hour a day sessions, 3 to 4 days in a row, like Paulo talked about. That's a serious dedication that is really kind of unreachable for a lot of people here in the U.S.
Yeah, that is hella dedication. Like, I haven't put in time like that since I was a college student.
Yeah.
And, I was a college student for a long time because I couldn't figure it out. But, like, I was on standard. Modern wasn't around, so it was, I guess, just standard. Maybe the first inklings of modern. But, like, yeah, I wish Pauper was known to me at that time. But, yeah, I just hats off to these guys putting in all these hours and, really pushing the format along, where we just kind of look at results and we don't actually, at least for me, like, I look at the results and say, oh, like, look at this innovation. We're pushing it along real quick, but like, it's because these guys are putting in all this time and, innovating.
Yeah, for sure. And it's really cool when I think all of us have watched Caleb Gannon's Gurmag Storm video. I forget what he actually named the deck. But, we see a deck like that and we think, oh, what a cool idea. I wonder if it's good. Somebody like Paulo or Carves sees a deck like that and they say, can I break this? And they're going to put in all the time and resources necessary to push that idea to its absolute limits. And when Paulo says that the deck has potential to be a tier 1 deck, I take his word for it. He knows what he's doing in that context.
I'm fearful he's just going to break the format. Yeah, and then we're going to have to deal with, like, the wreckage and have to play it or, and we talked about this. Like, is there a combo deck that can come in and be that 4th tier? Because we talked about, aggro, mid-range, control. Combos a little on the smaller percentage of that, but, mid-range has a lot in Pauper because it's so grindy. But
he mentions it's not getting played as much yet, but he looks at Tribe as a tier 1 deck already. His idea is that people are going to start playing Tribe now, maybe even more than when Gush was legal. And that's exciting to me as somebody who enjoys a good combo deck in a format.
Yeah. My first combo deck in my experience in Magic was Swan's Seismic Assault. And it was only available for like a couple months. And I was hesitant because I was kind of new to Magic and didn't have a lot of money, and I was like, well, I don't know. And then I saw the deck getting played in action, and I was like, oh, I have to build this. I have to play it, even if it's just for a month. I built it. I still have the deck to this day, where it's like, you just turn 4. Anybody, they're dead. Like, just turn 3, Seismic Assault, turn 4, Swans of Brian Argol, and they're dead. Like, that experience just kind of broke me into kind of like that third pillar in Magic, or if we're talking Pauper. It's the fourth pillar because mid-range is so prevalent. But
And,
yeah,
you know,
it was
I think the
very
reason that I
great
like
experience.
combo, and you recounting your stories of playing the deck in the past sort of brought this to the forefront of my mind, is that I think combo decks are the decks that lend themselves the best towards like telling that great story of when you top deck the perfect card, and you're just like, oh, and the synergy with the other cards in my deck was just perfect. I top decked this card and brought a losing situation to a dominating win. And combo really just lends itself towards those kind of games, and that's the most exciting kind of Magic to me. Whereas, a control deck, like, yeah, you'll win a lot of games with a control deck, but it's just not as fun to tell your friends, we sat there for 25 turns, and I would draw a card and pass, and I counted all his spells. I mean, it's another way to win, but it doesn't make for that great story. And as a podcaster, I love a great story. So I'm happy that, we have a community of players that are really actively pushing combo to its limits in Pauper right now, and, seeing what the potential for it is out there.
Yeah, I know, we kind of have a luxury here at RIW. And by the way, they have a 1K coming up. If anybody's near the East Coast or Midwest, October 5th, RIW Hobbies in Livonia, Michigan. 1K, possibly more. We have the professor, the well-known professor, coming out to it.
The professor from Tellurian Community College is going to be here as a special guest. He's going to be playing, so looking forward to that.
By any means, get here. Should be a great turnout for a Pauper event. But yeah, I love combo decks. I'm not a combo player, but like you said, that experience is great. I think we've seen a dip in that, but I'd love to see these Brazilian players, put together some lists and kind of shake up the format. It kind of feels like the pillar we're missing, and who knows what happens from there. We are in a shifting metagame, and it'd be nice to see a complete earth shift come that really shakes it up in another way from them.
Absolutely. So I do, want to thank Paulo again for giving us the opportunity to have him on the show. I know it was, there were some technical limitations, recording the interview, but I think it came out really great.
Yeah, I agree.
Before we go, if you guys just want to give kind of, your big takeaway from the interview, and just, what was the biggest thing you got from it?
I just think the amount of time they put into decks, I think it was enlightening. They put 8 to 10 hours a day, multiple days, just to tune a deck to make it good enough for even a league.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, for me, it's a peek behind the curtain. It's like, wow, okay, all this is going on. And, we have a great and healthy Pauper scene here at RW in Livonia, Michigan, but it's like, not everybody has this, but, and I'm a paper player, so I don't have, what some other players may be playing online all the time, or, maybe some players play Arena, but, I think they're really pushing the format along, and I'm really appreciative that we had the chance to kind of pick their brain and kind of, get a kind of little sneak peek of what's really going on. It's, I think, a really unique take and perspective on, what's really pushing the format.
Definitely.
With such much progression, even though there's not as much tournament support as, let's say Modern or Standard.
Yeah, and for me, I guess it's just that sense of community. That's kind of what I've always liked about Magic, is that no matter where you are, it's kind of the international language.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They are enjoying playing this game as much as we are. Yeah. He's thousands of miles away, so it was great to be able to, kind of bring that insight from Brazil to a U.S. audience. Let you guys know what's going on out there, that these names that you see online, they actually have people behind them. And yeah, it was a great opportunity, and I look forward to the next time, Paulo or one of his friends or maybe one of our listeners here will get a chance to be on the show and share their experience. So I guess we'll leave it at that for this episode. We'll have the full context of that interview, like I said, on our YouTube channel. So look for the link to that in the show notes. Once again, October 5th, RIW Hobbies is going to be hosting a 1K guaranteed Pauper tournament. They have these once a quarter. They're always a great time. If you've never been to one, this is one to come to. The professor from Tellurian Community College is going to be flying out to participate. yeah, we're real close to the airport, so if you've got some frequent flyer miles that are burning a hole in your pocket, come out and see us, and I look forward to it. Other than that, we hope to see you in the next episode.
Paup